What's up? Welcome into today's episode of Pushing the Pile. I'm Mike Renner, joined as always by my co-host Kyle Long. And on this very special 1 hour long episode, we're going to be going through the Achilles heels of all of last year's playoff teams. What part of the roster or what part of the coaching staff for some of these could potentially sink teams that were on the precipice of a Super Bowl last year? We're going to start with the teams that weren't on the precipice of a Super Bowl last year. We're going to start with our Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, work our way back down. Kyle, they don't have a lot of weaknesses. This is a good team. They are the reigning Lombardi champion holders for a reason, but there's got to be an Achilles heel somewhere, right? What do you got?
Well, I'll just go from the low-hanging fruit, the cliche stuff. Success is the Achilles heel. You've had so much success, and you and I have talked about this on the Push in the Pile podcast before.
Like
you wonder what version of the Philadelphia Eagles are we going to see? Is it going to be the confident group that's going to attain something else, or are they going to rest on their laurels? Will there be infighting? Look, there's been a lot of questions about this team, but one question I'll never have is about the talent that Howie Roseman has brought into the building, the way that the coaches at the different positions have developed their talent, and they've gotten the most out of all their players. If I really had to have a gripe about this group is, are we going to see consistent play from their superstars up front? They've invested a lot in that defensive line. I'd love to see guys like Jalen Carter be a down in, down out threat instead of the best player on the field every once in a while.
Yeah, see, I look at this Eagles roster, and you mentioned Howie Roseman. He's still dealing. He's still trying to improve it. They literally just traded for Jacorian Bennett from the Las Vegas Raiders today, right, to get him on that roster, the cornerback. And I agree. Like, you go up and down, and anything you want to say is an Achilles heel, it really is a nitpick. Like, from a talent perspective, there's no position unit on this roster you can point to and say they're even below average. There's not one. And you're saying the third down, and who do they have on third downs? Because they did lose some big pieces to that in Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, who obviously were like go-to guys. But I think they could even be like, there's a world where they're even better, right? Because their biggest impact third down guys, some of them, like you mentioned, Jalen Carter, he was only in year 2. Nolan Smith was only in year 2. They have guy Moro Jomo was only in year 2 as well, and he'll be now. So like some of your guys who were impact players from last year should only be getting better, as well as you brought in some pass rush specialists. You know, Azeez Ojulari kind of took a prove-it deal with the Eagles because he wasn't getting the market he was after his time in New York, and said he wanted to go to a spot where he can produce. And well, everyone basically that lines up and rushes the pass for Philly produces. Josh Uche, similar manner, has been known as a pass rush specialist over the course of his career, signs a small prove-it deal there with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I look at that defense.
Mike, I wonder what came first, the chicken or the egg, when it comes to production from rushers. I know the Achilles heel, I was like, who is your marquee go-to third down guy that's going to get sacks? But to your point, all these guys produce. Do you think it's because they go against the best offensive line in football every single day in practice? Or do you think that Howie Roseman can really tap into this sixth sense of, no, this guy will produce. We just know that. We're not going to miss.
To me, it's a confluence of things. One, that, iron sharpens iron. That can't be understated. If you have to beat Lane Johnson and then you do, chances are you can then beat any other right tackle in the NFL. So that helps. But then it's the fact that they go 7 deep every year. And so anytime it's third down, there's no guy on the field who's a dud, who you're just like, okay, we don't have to worry about this guy winning his one-on-ones. Every guy could win their one-on-one. And when that's the case, and when you don't have to play 1,000 snaps a year, no one's out there down 1, 2, 3. Guys get their rest. Guys rotate in and out. It just makes life that much easier. So if I'm looking for an Achilles heel, probably the only one is that they don't have a top OC. That's seemingly what it takes to sustain success in the NFL. A Kyle Shanahan, an Andy Reid, someone who's really doing it at that level. And they don't have, the elite quarterback either at that level in terms of what he can do as a passer. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is a fantastic quarterback, but he's not Patrick Mahomes, right? He's not Joe Burrow. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Josh Allen. He's not these guys who keep you there year in and year out. So that's really the only thing that could be impacting them. But you know what? They'll be in the mix. They'll be a 1-2 or top wild card. This team is not falling off. No Super Bowl hangover here. Now, Kansas City Chiefs, team they faced, they have a little bit more question marks. They've been trying to cobble it together. They've obviously held very strong, but every passing year, it seems like they lose one more piece. What do you think the Achilles heel could be for this team?
Well, again, it's just the ability to sustain excellence for so long. Fatigue, that mental fatigue starts to weigh on you. But I think Patrick Mahomes is one of these guys that's immune to it. Even though they took such a beating in that Super Bowl game, you'd have to imagine they had to lick their wounds a little bit. But everything I'm seeing and hearing out of the Kansas City training camp is that this offense has hit the ground running. They're healthy in spots they haven't been healthy in almost a year. They're getting more experience out of some of these young receivers they want to get the most out of. And then the most important piece is, Josh Simmons at the left tackle spot. He's been great playing with physicality. My question is, as it pertains to physicality, will this defensive front seven be able to put their heels in the ground or gain some ground at the line of scrimmage when you're facing some of the league's best rushing units? As we've seen, some of these rushing units, if they can bully you in that first drive in the first quarter, it's going to be a lot of the same for the rest of the game. And that really changes the game plan for some of these great offenses who really never get a chance.
Yeah, my initial thought when I was talking about the Achilles heel of what could be for the Chiefs was the offensive line and what everyone talked about last year. But I think I agree with you. And the more I think about it, that this defensive front, not only how do they stop the run, but also who besides Chris Jones rushes the passer? I mean, George Karlaftis is a good, not great pass rusher. But if those two have to be out there every single down, you're in trouble. I mean, you don't have a plan C there. You don't have a third option who you really confidently can say that guy can win one-on-ones, and life just gets difficult for you when that's the case. But I want to go back to the offensive line, which is what I originally said, because as much as Josh Simmons looked great in training camp, and he is still a rookie, and there was still a reason he fell to pick 31, right? Right? So was it pick 32? They swapped pick 32. It was pick 32. They originally picked.
You're looking at a pick. You're looking at a pick number 20 in the first round with 4 starts in college. Who took a trip to Hawaii that year. Now that just means the team was not very good, but rookies can go out there and play. Just go, let your freak flag fly, as Aaron Cromer, my offensive line coach, used to tell me as a young rookie. That's what I would tell him, and I'm sure Big Red and all those guys are telling him that in that building. Man, oh man, they could keep the strength if Simmons can be a guy at the offensive line position for the Chiefs.
Oh my gosh. I mean, yes. Like that's the thing is this could be not an Achilles heel. It could actually be a better unit than we saw, especially the one we saw in the Super Bowl. But then there is, even if Simmons is great, you're missing Tooney in the left guard, right? Like you could set your watch to this interior offensive line last year when it was Tooney, Humphrey, Trey Smith. Like that was the best interior offensive line in the NFL, bar none. And so for as much as Mahomes had to worry about his blind side, he never had to worry about stepping up in the pocket, having that dish, as you love to call it, that clean dish for him to move up into. This might not be the case this year. That might not be the case. Kingsley Suamataia, whoever it is that wins that left guard position, there's no telling what that's going to look like. And so, rookie left tackle, question mark at left guard, we'll just see. But that to me feels like where teams are really going to target early on this season.
I know we got to go to break, but I want to say this schematically before we get out of here. Yes, they had Joe Tooney, and yes, they could swing him to left tackle, but him at his best position was left guard. You almost waste having Joe Tooney because he's next to another All-Pro in Creed Humphrey. Now you've kind of got that go-between really good players with Simmons and Creed Humphrey. They can do some different things from a protection standpoint, but now at least Patrick Mahomes knows that left tackle spot is going to be worth his salt.
All right, those were your Achilles heels for the Super Bowl teams from a year ago. We're going to get to the conference runner-ups right after this. We're rolling through the Achilles heels from all the playoff teams from a year ago. Now we're up with the conference runner-ups, starting with the Washington Commanders. Kyle, they did a big-time offseason overhaul, a lot of new faces. But what would you say is their Achilles heel still?
Well, if there's a writer's strike, their storybook, season won't get an opportunity to repeat itself. Look, I mean, make no mistake about it. Jaden Daniels is fantastic. This football team will get better. He will get better. but I still have some suspicions about their ability to get home with four defenders, with those front four defenders on the defensive line. What we saw last year from Dan Quinn's unit is a lot of, I don't want to say exotic, but these one-off pressures that involve some off-ball linebackers being involved in the rush plan, double A mugs, a lot of twists. It leaves you open for some stuff on the back end. So you'd like to have those linebackers allocated in the secondary so you can just win with the front four. We saw that with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's the reason they're so dominant. You look around the league, the best defenses win with four. It affords them so many more things they can do on the back end.
Yeah, I'm right there with you that it starts and ends with this defense. I don't think anyone looking at this offense with adding Deebo Samuel, with adding Laramie Tunsil, hopefully retaining Terry McLaurin. We'll see what happens with that. But I don't think anyone expects that unit to take any sort of a step back. If anything, they could even be better this year with Jane Daniels in year two. But the defense has a lot of turnover. I'm not sure it got a lot better, though. And I'm looking at the defensive line, too, where not only do I wonder how they rush the passer without blitzing and leaving themselves open on the back end, but how do they stop the run? Because the additions they made, I mean, you lose Jonathan Allen, you swap him out for Javon Kinlaw. That's a lateral move, if not a downgrade at best. You add Von Miller. At this age, he doesn't care about stopping the run whatsoever. He just wants to rack up more sacks for his Hall of Fame candidacy. Eddie Goldman, Dietrich Wise, not really needle movers. Those guys are backups to, play a certain role. I'm not sure they're really shoring up your run defense. You were the only team last year in the bottom 12 run defenses in EPA per play that made the playoffs. All of the other 11 did not make the playoffs. Teams like the 49ers, teams like the Bengals, teams like the Cowboys, good teams, couldn't stop the run. Well, guess what? They're home in January. If that's still the case, if they don't shore up their run defense woes and they're having to blitz every third down, you can only rely on Jane Daniels in this offense so much. At some point, that front seven's got to play a lot better against the run.
Yeah, there's only so many, I hate to use it again, magic, storybook ways that you win
Yep.
football games. And more often than not, these games are decided by 7 points. I would be willing to bet that defensive front seven, front four in particular, specifically, is going to be the reason that they're losing some of these one-score games.
I will say, if there's silver lining, just to give some hope that this turns around from last year, Johnny Newton, your second round defensive tackle, he was a rookie going into year two. If he takes a big leap, obviously, like rookie DT, one of the hardest positions to translate early on. Basically, the strongest guy you'll ever face in college is the guy you face every single down in the NFL. So it's just a different sort of level of physicality that you have to face. Maybe he takes a big jump. Maybe they don't have to put as many resources on the back end. If the secondary is better in coverage, they can dedicate more resources to the box, play the run a little bit better. There are reasons for hope, but I think you'd be kidding yourself if you're a Commanders fan looking at what they did defensively and say, yeah, we fixed this. This is definitely going to be better this year. I think there are still big question marks for this franchise. Now let's get to the other side, get to the AFC, where the Buffalo Bills, obviously your conference runner-up a year ago. What would you say? Because they've had an Achilles heel seemingly every single year. They have not been able to get over the hump. What would it be this season?
I wrote secondary question mark, pass rush question mark. It feels like there's a lot of these pass rush teams because if you have the ability to win pass rush, if you've got good players up front, you've got so much more complexity on the back end. You can disguise better. You can have winning defensive plays as opposed to reactive defensive plays. And for the Bills, it's no different. I know a lot of people want to talk about that offensive side of the ball. But look at that guy walking out there with the red visor. I have no concerns about the offensive side of the ball. They've got an O-line. They've got a number of number two receivers, and they've got Josh Allen. Let's be honest about it. They've got a chance. Where they're going to lose out is when they can't get home on some of these fantastic quarterbacks in the AFC playoff race. You look around the AFC, it's Lamar Jackson, it's Joe Burrow, it's Patrick Mahomes. The list goes on and on and on. If you can't get home on these guys, they can run the score up like a 7-on-7 drill. So for the Buffalo Bills, they're hoping their investment in the offseason, bringing some of these players in from other teams, bringing guys in like Joey Bosa will pay off come playoff time, most importantly.
Yeah, and they drafted 3 guys in the first 4 rounds to play along that defensive line. TJ Sanders, Landon Jackson, Deion Walker. I'm not sure any of those guys really factor in it. If you're hanging your hat on someone changing around your pass rushing woes, someone changing around your inability to really take over games with that front four, it is Joey Bosa. But again, you're hanging your hat on a guy who's one of the most injured defensive linemen in recent NFL history. The guy just cannot stay on the football field. The reason why the Chargers were not interested in bringing him back, despite definitely having a need in terms of rushing the passer themselves. So the Buffalo Bills, I agree that that side of the ball has the bigger worries, but I'm going to flip to the offense for my Achilles heel. I think that the lack of a pure go-to guy in the offense. Now, Josh Allen's Josh Allen. He's Superman. There's a reason he won the MVP. He can do things that other quarterbacks can't. But that's exactly why I want to pair him with a guy who can also do other things other wide receivers can't, right? Like I want a guy that combination, like it was when he had Stephon Diggs at his peak, where it's just like you have to basically scheme around that. You have to worry about that every single play, or else you're going to give up explosive plays. Josh Allen can create them outside the pocket, but they are fickle when that's the case. You can sometimes have them in a game and it looks awesome. And then sometimes when they're not there, when those big explosives aren't coming, the offense goes in the tank because third downs, who are you going to? They didn't have a guy go over 900 yards last year in this receiving core. Now, I am of the opinion that Dalton Kincaid was drafted to be that guy in the first round a few years ago. They are hoping he's that guy. But the knee issues he had last year, now extending into training camp, I'm not sure I feel comfortable at any of these receivers when it comes to a gotta have it situation actually going and getting it.
Yeah, I mean, look, you said it. They have Josh Allen. You want somebody to make this offense exponentially better, go pair him with somebody. But I thought that's who Dalton Kincaid was. And that's the big question that guys like Pete Prisco are asking. What version of Dalton Kincaid are we going to see this year? Because that could be the guy that maybe multiplies the ability of this offense, not necessarily exponentially increases it. But you bring a star receiver in, and all of a sudden Josh Allen becomes a different beast. And you look around the league, and all these great quarterbacks do have those elite receivers. It even exists in Baltimore. You and I both love Flowers. I don't think he gets the flowers he deserves. There's nobody on Josh Allen or the Buffalo Bills payroll up there that is really scratching the surface of what Zay Flowers can get accomplished week in, week out.
Yeah, 100%. And why, and to tie a bow on the Bills and why I say the receiving core, because you mentioned the Ravens. I'll also mention the Chiefs, the teams they got to go through to get through the AFC. The Chiefs are going to punch you in the mouth with their corners. They're going to come and play press coverage. They are going to challenge your receivers game in and game out. Baltimore Ravens have one of, if not the best secondary in the NFL. And the best secondary is probably the top three secondaries in the entire NFL, all in the AFC, all should be in the playoffs. It's the Ravens, it's the Broncos, it's the Texans. Those three secondaries are going to be your playoff games. That's what you're going to have to go through. And so do they match up well against any of them with this receiving core? Not at all. Not at all, in my opinion. So that's why I'm a little bit worried about the state of it for this Buffalo Bills team. All right, those were your runner-ups, your conference runner-ups from a year ago. We're going to get down to the divisional round exits coming up right after this. We've been going through the Achilles heels of every single playoff team from a year ago, and we moved on to some of the divisional round exits. Starting off with your Baltimore Ravens, who seemingly have never been short of an Achilles heel. They seemingly find one every single year in the playoffs. Kyle, will it be different this time, or do they have a glaring one that you see?
Well, glaring Achilles heel for any Baltimore Ravens fan is the fact that they have that accent. I just can't do the accent. It's brutal, in my opinion. Honestly, look, I feel terrible for Ravens fans because you gotta pound the table every year for whatever reason for a quarterback who is outstanding in his field. People don't give him the respect. People don't give the team respect. But look, you got to look around this locker room and say it's different this year, right? I mean, we're even better than we were defensively, and Lamar and Derek have another year under their belt together, and we know the mistakes. This feels like the same conversation I had last year with myself about the Baltimore Ravens. And nobody wants to see somebody get a Lombardi trophy like I want to see Lamar Jackson get a Lombardi trophy. Trust me, I love watching this guy play. I think he deserves it. But as a Ravens fan, you can only help but think, well, we're going to get another MVP caliber performance out of our quarterback with an early exit in the playoffs. And it's just a damn shame because they've done such a good job constructing that roster, putting together a two-sided approach. That's really my Achilles heel is like this is the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Well, we changed it last year. We brought Derrick Henry in, and it didn't work. One of their biggest players failed to convert on a season-ending play down there in the corner of the end zone. It's brutal to watch. I'm excited to watch Lamar Jackson be on fire again this season. That's just the way he rolls.
Yeah, their Achilles heel, I mean, it kind of feels like what we talked about with Philly. There's not an Achilles heel. There's not a unit that you look at and say they're below average. Honestly, there's not really any units you look at and even say they're like even just slightly above average. Like every single unit on this roster is stacked. They're stacked. They might be the most talented team in the NFL right now. Is after adding Jair Alexander to the secondary, what they did maintaining this offseason, there's just not a lot of holes. And you have the top end with the MVP caliber quarterback and the borderline MVP caliber running back too with Derrick Henry. So they just have everything that you could possibly want. And to me, that's the Achilles heel, is that it's the highest of expectations. Expectations have been high. They've been one of the most successful teams of the past half decade, the Lamar Jackson era there. Every single season, it's the same. They are one of the best teams in the NFL. But all of a sudden it doesn't come playoff time. So that to me is the Achilles heel, is that they are going to go 13-4. They're going to go 14-3. They're not going to lose a lot of regular season games, this team. But then come divisional round, everyone and their mother is going to be talking about the fact that the Ravens do this every year. That's just it. They're going to be talking about how do the Ravens pee down their leg once again. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
It's got to be tough what's harder, being a Ravens fan or being like a Jets fan?
Ooh, I mean, Jets, dude. Let's be real. Ravens have a Super Bowl, a couple in the past 30 years. If you're an adult, you've actually seen them be good. Jets, you just have to wallow in the misery. All right, let's get to the Detroit Lions, who know a thing or two about that misery. Unfortunately, now they're not. Unfortunately, fortunately, now they do not. They are back atop the heap in the NFL. But they lost their OC and DC. So going into this year with bringing much of that talent back, what's their Achilles heel?
Well, they've still got the Johnnies and the Joes opposite those X's and O's, and people always wonder what's more important. Well, we're going to find out this year. One thing I don't doubt is that the people they have in place at both coordinator spots, filling the shoes of some giants that came before them, they're going to have some good game plans that they put out there. My question, and I think that this will be the Achilles heel, is the Detroit Lions offensive and defensive coordinators' ability to have halftime adjustments this year. One of the hallmarks of a fantastic coaching staff, great head coach, and somebody who delegates to the people underneath of him is the ability to adjust at halftime. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, and every defensive coordinator out there knows how to punch some of these offenses in the mouth. So can you adjust? That's what I have for the Detroit Lions, and the obvious, can they still stay healthy? The lack of health at the end of the year is what cost them a Super Bowl run. I anticipate they're still dealing with a ton of those injuries on the rehab side of things, and obviously there's more injuries to come, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do think that the injuries were obviously their Achilles heel last year. It was, the defense was completely decimated, and you're still honestly dealing with some of the effects. I know Aiden Hutchinson has been getting rave reviews from training camp, but it was a major injury that he suffered. Aleem McNeil still coming back from an ACL tear. No news or no clue about how good he'll be once the lights are on the regular season, but it just has to revolve around the coaching staff. You can't lose guys as coveted, as praised, as good at their jobs as Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn were, and just think that you'll be able to backfill him, especially on the offensive side of the ball for me. I mean, Kelvin Shepherd has been there in Detroit. He's, the Aaron Glenn playbook was not anything unique in terms of what they were doing schematically. It was more of a culture thing that he brought to the table there, Aaron Glenn, for that defense, why they performed so well. That may be able to stay intact. It's the offense I'm worried about, because you replaced Ben Johnson, one of the best play callers in the modern NFL, with a guy who was last offensive coordinator for the 2017 Jets. And I don't know about you, but the 2017 Jets averaged under 20 points per game. It was not a pinnacle of offensive efficiency, obviously nowhere near the talent that this Detroit Lions team has. But I think that's the worry, is that Ben Johnson's game planning was special. It was unique across the NFL. You have lost that. How do you replace it? Because the talent's great there. The talent is not hands down going to win, going to put up 30 points per game, no matter who's calling plays or a talent, in my opinion.
There's a certain belief level and effort level that comes along with having a coach who beyond the shadow of a doubt is brilliant. And when you go out there and you put your grass to the cleats, what you installed in the classroom and the days before, and you really believe in something, you find a way to get supremely focused. I would imagine that while there's still a great culture in Detroit and they're still going to be working hard and a tough group, they're going to go for it on fourth down. There's going to be a bit of doubt that creeps in to some of these guys' minds when things may not work out on a third down, as they do for any offense, But you have to think that they might be looking backwards a little bit at Ben Johnson throughout the course of this year, particularly on the offensive side of the ball.
To steelman the Lions case, though, they not only are uber talented, right? We talked about how good this roster is that Brad Holmes put together. They're so young still. I mean, they've put together a good roster that should be getting better feasibly. Like guys who are a vast majority of their impact guys are within their first 5 years in the league, like where you're still improving as a player, where you still can get better. And especially in the secondary where it's pretty much all those guys. And oh, by the way, they had a DJ Reed, who's a shutdown corner zone, right? So it's Terran Arnold, who could get better. It's Brian Branch, who could still be getting better. Kirby Joseph, and those guys are all pros already. So I do think there's a world where this Lions team is actually more talented. It actually performs better. Maybe they don't have the schematic advantages that they had last year, but this could very easily still be the 1 seed in the NFC when it's all said and done. All right, those are your Achilles heels for some divisional round exits. We're going to get to the others, the Los Angeles Rams, the Houston Texans, right after this. All right, we're rolling through the Achilles heels of all the playoff teams from last year. And we've gotten to the Los Angeles Rams, where I'm actually going to change mine, Kyle. I had this secondary, but the more days that go on with Matt Stafford not practicing, and with what I heard from Sean McVay today describing what he is doing at practice, which is like, he said walking sometimes is his exercise. That's giving me bad thoughts about where his back is going to be. When walking is your exercise for a football player with a back injury, how are you going to take hits? How is this guy going to be ready for week 1 and ready to survive a 18-week NFL season?
Well, we know Matt Stafford's going to be ready. Whatever it takes for Matt Stafford to be out there slinging the pill like we've seen for so long from Matty Stafford. But my question is about that offensive line and their depth and their ability to stay healthy, because we saw at times last year where they had to shuffle some pieces around in that unit. It did not look good. And, compounding that with the fact that Matt Stafford's got some angry vertebrae right now, that's not a good sign. And, I talk to my dad a lot about football, and we always end up talking about the Rams. He's obsessed with the Rams offense. And I'm always like, why are you so obsessed with the Rams offense? He's like, well, if you really watch them, their receivers play like tight ends, offensive linemen. They bash people up. And you go watch this team on film, and it's as talented a group, and they light up the scoreboard, but they are tough. They're tough. Matt Stafford, no different. That offensive line is going to have to be really tough this year, because their season balances on whether or not Matt Stafford can stay intact, Devontae Adams can stay healthy, and help them out in the way that they know that he can.
Yeah, do we think Devontae knew what he was signing up for? Because I think there's a reason why Cooper Kupp's last 1,000-yard year came when he was 28 years old. It's because it's hard to dig out linebackers as a wide receiver as consistently as Sean McVay asks his receivers to do in that offense. And it is awesome to watch. Like, you get buy-in when all 11 guys are all on the same page, and that running game and the run action off of it is going. It is a beautiful, artistic offense to watch. But they got one of the oldest receivers in the NFL out there asking him to dig out, a 7-tech at times. I don't know if he's ready for that. I don't know if he signed up for, $20 million a year to go block 20 times a game.
Sean McVay remembers the date and time of his first fart. He remembers the first good play call he had in Pop Warner football. He remembers a good joke that Andrew Whitworth made in their Super Bowl year. I can promise you this. He also knows and understands that there are different types of horses out there. There's mules and then there's thoroughbreds. This guy, Devontae Adams, he's going to see him working throughout this offseason and training camp. He's going to say, this is what a thoroughbred looks like. I need to keep him healthy. He can't be doing mule work. And they've had guys who are thankless, tough, great football players there for a long time who have done the dirty work. Let's hope that there's enough guys in that receiver room willing and able to do that dirty work so Devontae Adams can go do the beautiful things that he does.
This team really does feel like if any of these are Achilles, though, like they very much feel like Achilles because they have one of the strongest units in the NFL, which is their defensive line. I mean, they are an ox along that front four, and they have depth, they have youth. You do not want, as a quarterback, this to be the next team up on your schedule. They are going to rack up sacks at potentially a historic rate with how they scheme up that defensive front four and just let them go at quarterbacks. They don't really worry too much about the running game. They feel confident that they'll clean it up with their second level defenders, that those guys in the front four just go create havoc. And well, they do. That's why they tied the record for sacks in a single playoff game a year ago. So that's a unit that's just going to dominate. No one questions that. It is just how scary is it to have 30-year-old plus corners who were never any great shakes in Darius Williams and Keller Witherspoon being your guys you trust on the outside, and then 37-year-old quarterback and a 32-year-old wide receiver being what you are hanging your hat on offensively. That is a little worrisome, in my opinion. Let's get to the other team here. Last divisional round exit, Houston Texans. What, in your eyes, is their Achilles heel this year?
Well, I think there's no surprise here, but I'm going to be talking about the offensive line. Now, they got rid of Laramie Tunsil, who's one of the top three edge protectors in all of the National Football League, and he's been that way for a long time. And guys like me, we scratch our head because you don't let a talent like that walk. But then you take a look at the production, the ability for that offense to protect their star quarterback, CJ Stroud, last year. And it just, it ain't working. If I'm a coach, I'm just going to say, what we got ain't working. So we need to spread out some of that money. We need to be able to sign more guys, strengthen more of the weak spots along the offensive line instead of having just a bright burner there at the left tackle spot. So it's happy trails to Laramie Tunsil, and hopefully happy year for CJ Stroud, who's paired up with a new coordinator and he'll have a new lease on life here. I mean, that second year regression is tough. We've seen it from guys before, but CJ really wore it last year, not only from his performance, but obviously coupled with the lack of protection. That is the Achilles heel. If they continue to not be able to protect CJ Stroud and be able to control the line of scrimmage, unfortunately, we're going to see another year of wasted talent with CJ Stroud in Houston.
Yes, this one was, of all these playoff teams, maybe the biggest layup. It's just like when your starters are Cam Robinson, Laken Tomlinson, Jared Patterson, Titus Howard, and Blake Fisher, you might as well put like bright flashing lights around it and say like, yes, this is the Achilles. Everyone knows that they can just tee off on this offensive line in obvious passing situations. There is not a guy on that unit that third down comes along, I know as a quarterback is going to get the job done. There just isn't, unfortunately. That's where they're at as an offensive line. That's the kind of bed they made here with their young quarterback, which is objectively not the place you want to be in when this is kind of the prime Super Bowl window of the rookie contract quarterback. They threw the kitchen sink at it. They added a lot of resources to it this offseason, but I don't know if anyone is really going to fix it.
A lot of names we recognize.
Exactly. But I don't know if any of them fixes it. The one thing I'll say, if there is one to play devil's advocate, one reason for hope, it's that last year their struggles got exacerbated by play calling. Bobby Slowick was not adjusting to the fact that this offensive line was in shambles. Coaching and how you handle a poor unit up front matters a lot. Go to the Minnesota Vikings last year. Yeah, they had solid tackle play for much of the year, but then Christian Darrisaw went down, and the offense was still humming. They had one of the worst interior offensive lines in the NFL, and they still were putting up points with Sam Darnold because they did a great job of protecting it, because they emphasized the play action game so much, because they dedicated resources to making sure they could protect up front and just say, we have dudes on the outside. They can run the routes. We can do 2 and 3 man routes and we'll still be successful. That's how I feel about the Houston Texans this year. They can do 2 and 3 man routes. You can just get Nico Collins, Jaden Higgins, Christian Kirk out in a route. We don't need any more than that. We can dedicate more resource to our offensive line and still produce. So if I think the O-line could be a problem, but still get better offensive results than we saw a year ago. Now, I think they're a far ways from competing a year ago, but there is hope at least for improvement offensively with Nick Caley at OC here.
Yeah, I was going to say that begs the question. I was going to say that begs the question what kind of offense we were going to see, but that answers it. And I'm going to paint this picture for you. As an offensive lineman, particularly if I'm at a disadvantage from a talent standpoint, the easiest way for me to negate a pass rush is to method act being a run blocker. And oftentimes you see that these play action protections are what guys beg for because they can close the space to the defender, get their hands on them, sink their hips. Next thing you know, your job in protection is done. You know, it's a lot harder than moving forward and blocking a guy, going backwards and trying to block a guy. So to your point, Mike, I would enjoy seeing a lot of that action because they've got a true X in Nico Collins. Just get him the ball with room to run and watch what happens.
And the smart OCs in the NFL are fully aware of everything you just said. It's a weapon. And the fact that the NFL went so long avoiding using it was a crime, and we're starting to use it now. Your job's starting to get easier. Offensive linemen around the NFL, we're giving you a reprieve from these.
That's why they're paying them twice as much as when I was in the damn league, Mike.
I think that's inflation, actually. I think that's the economy. All right. Those were your divisional round exits. We are going to get to the wild card exits rapid fire coming up right after this. We've been hitting every single playoff team and highlighting their potential Achilles heels for the upcoming 2025 NFL season. And we're going to rapid fire here. We're going to go through the remaining teams, the wild card exits, starting with Los Angeles Chargers. What do you got?
Well, I wrote revolving door in secondary during camp, but really my thoughts now are stemming from what this offense is going to do outside of Ladd McConkey. Obviously, Justin Herbert is fantastic. If you don't have somebody that's a reliable pass catcher outside of your number one, who is going to be Ladd McConkey, he was fantastic last year. What the heck do you really have? We saw this team come out looking flat in crunch time at the end of the season. Don't like that. Let's hope that Jim Harbaugh has cleansed this culture fully, and we're looking at a completely 100% Jim Harbaugh-led football team this year because, you know, it takes some time to get the taste out of your mouth from prior administrations.
Now, you know, a Harbaugh team is always going to overperform expectations, right? Especially on the defensive side of the ball. Seemingly, he turns average defensive linemen into studs more than any other head coach I can remember. But I still don't see how they rush the passer effectively. You are banking on a 34-year-old Khalil Mack to be your primary pass rush. He's ageless, but I'm not sure he's that ageless that I'm trusting him to really be a down-out winner. Your interior is probably the worst interior defensive unit in the NFL in terms of defensive tackles. You're banking on a third-rounder, Jamari Caldwell, to be like your best starter. I don't know. I worry about what this front four looks like in a division with Bo Nix and a great pass-protecting offensive line, Patrick Mahomes, and what could be a good pass-protecting offensive line that we talked off the rip. I don't know if they get enough. I don't know if they get enough to replicate last year's defensive success. Let's get to the Minnesota Vikings. What do you
got? 2 letters. Do you want to guess what they are?
I think they're the same letter. Yeah.
JJ McCarthy. Okay, look, I mean, let's be honest. It's a quarterback-led league. If you don't have elite quarterback play, you just don't have a shot. Just flat out. Okay, there's teams that enter camp every year, and they're like, well, we're going to see how good we're going to do, but we know we're not going to win the Super Bowl. Right now, that's the Minnesota Vikings. So I would consider that to be an Achilles heel, something that's holding you back. You're 1 point where there's like that red flashing light. It's your quarterback spot. So let's hope that JJ McCarthy can hit the ground running. Good news for Minnesota Vikings fans. It's only going to get better. So if the season starts and this young man doesn't quite look like he's up to speed, maybe he's a deer in the headlights, just trust and understand that you guys have a great head coach. You've got really good protectors on the offensive line. You got one of the best pass catchers in football, a great second option, and a third option in your tight end. So, look, you're in a situation in Minnesota where it could get better and better, but it might not be very good at the beginning.
See, I think even if it gets better, I'm worried about the Achilles heel that is the secondary, and specifically your cornerbacks. You have now your starting cornerbacks were backups for two different teams in the NFL a year ago. Jeffrey Okudah, Isaiah Rodgers. Jeffrey Okudah was in Houston last year. Isaiah Rodgers in Philly. Neither one were starters. That is your handpicked group. That's worrisome to me. So that to me is a obvious Achilles heel, but JJ very easily could be. We just don't know, right? We just have no clue what he's going to look like when the lights are on. All right, Tampa Bay Bucks, Achilles heel. What do you got?
Well, I put Tristan Wirfs' health, because you and I both understand how important it is to have good offensive linemen. But when you've got an X factor offensive lineman like Tristan Wirfs, you can do so many things. Man schemes open up for you, the ability to get him out in space. He's a dancing bear in pass protection. He can cave in the line of scrimmage in the run game. But the thing that I love about him the most are those one-off conversion plays where you get him out in space and you can just put one of your skill players behind him with the football, because you know as a lead blocker he's not going to miss. He's got magnetic abilities in open space, which is a rare trait for somebody his size. The other question mark I have is new coordinator. Do we see the same shape-shifting ability from this offense that we saw last year under Liam Cohen? Because they did a great job tailoring the offense to what their group was doing well at the time.
Yeah, I'm right there with you about Tristan Wirfs. If you don't have him, you're not getting through the NFC. And obviously, he'll be back a few weeks in. But not only that, it's like if you don't have him, if anyone else goes down, your second unit is not good, at least on paper. We haven't seen a lot of these guys, but they were pretty much all either UDFAs or late day 3 picks that they have in their second tier of offensive linemen, just not inspiring a lot of confidence in me when that's the case. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers. I love ours here. We have very similar ones. I have too many new pieces, and you have one really old piece as your Achilles heel.
I mean, that's it. One really old piece, and I think it's two on the head here, on the nose with the Achilles heel segment. But look, he's 2 years removed, essentially, from that Achilles. We're going to see the fully healthy version of Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh. It's exciting, but boy, oh boy, it's spooky, man. It's like one of those thriller movies. You want to cover your eyes, but you still want to watch a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, their offense right now, new quarterback, new wide receiver 1, new starting left tackle, new starting right tackle. That's a lot of turnover. And not to say that they can't be improvements. They might be, but that's just a lot of turnover for them to gel quickly. And this is a division in the AFC that, like, you better gel quickly or else you're going to be fighting to keep your head above water the rest of the year. All right, Green Bay Packers. Excited to see your answer here.
Well, their Achilles heel is and always will be the Chicago Bears. Shout out to the boys in Lake Forest. Bear down. I'll say this: Jordan Love inconsistency, and I don't just mean like he goes up and down with his play. His health is inconsistent. We haven't seen him be able to forge some of these unspoken sixth sense relationships with some of his receivers that you see from guys who just never leave the field, and the reps are in the millions with these guys. That's what the Green Bay Packers need this year if they want to be one of those top 3 offenses in football.
Yeah, I go with the other side. They just got to win with 4. Bottom 10 in pressure rate a year ago. They had to blitz to get it. If that's the case this year, you're just going to get bounced in the playoffs once again. All right, Broncos, last one. Quick here. What is your Achilles heel for the Denver Broncos?
Very good defense. They could be very great if they get some luck in the health department. Some of the guys they brought in, not very healthy. Something to watch there, Mike.
Yeah, I think they need to fix this run game. All right, there's your Achilles heels. Hopefully you enjoyed pushing the pile. Tune in every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Until then, keep pushing.